All righty, folks. We're going to go ahead and get started because we have some really, really great information ready for today. So, we are here for the future pathways, the wisdom of the circle, reclaiming ancestral governance and modern board structures. My name is Karis Adams. I am the Director of Organizational Services here at Mid-America Arts Alliance. And so, welcome again. We here at Mid-America believe in strengthening and supporting artists, cultural organizations, and communities throughout the region and beyond. We are a regional arts organization representing Arkansas, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and Texas. Our website is www.maaaa.org. I'm also excited to welcome our facilitator for today, Rafael Feliciano-Roman. Rafael is the founder and executive director of the Afro-Caribbean Cultural Center and a nonprofit consultant for Cacique Taino LLC, where he supports BIPOC-led organizations in strengthening governance, cultural preservation, and sustainable leadership structures. A dedicated public servant and community advocate, Rafael brings extensive experience in board development, consensus, facilitation, and culturally rooted leadership practices. Grounded in indigenous circle processes and ancestral governance traditions, his work centers on decolonizing institutional spaces and advancing equitable, relationship centered models of decision making. Through facilitation, training, and strategic advising, Rafael equips nonprofit boards and community leaders with practical tools to build trust, strengthen accountability, and cultivate collective power within their organization. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Rafael.
Thank you so much, Karis. Thank you, Mirai, Ariko Mabu, which means hello and thank you in Taino Hitawatia. My name is Rafael Feliciano-Roman. My preferred pronouns are he, she, or thickums. Just don't call me fat, and we're friends. I am I like to say thick and plump, Taino Afro-Boricua man. I do have short cut hair, almost like a flat top. Karis noticed earlier I was growing it out. I always ebb and flow with it. I have a beard. I'm wearing a black t-shirt that says Taino on it for those who need a visual description. And I just want to start by acknowledging the land in which I am coming to you from, which is Waterbury, Connecticut, which is the ancestral home of the Wampanesers, the Pagussets, and the Mohegans. And I am Borinquen. I'm going to be reading in my tongue a welcome to you all in Hitawahia Taino, and I will translate it after. Usa mauka o lukuno. Ita kena kiribano. Ta irile kasike wakuya. Haria tonawana. Wakuya. Datraha borinquen. Kena kuwa. Da keiba alu Waterbury. Datrahaka warue. Alia la ina iwon. Kena asubila alie. Lili idana. Kena la wikila a meling. Taina karawiano. Tu le wania adikara a eriwa boni. Bokia Bon Wa Muia Autunwa Jorge Estevez. And what I just said was good morning, members, family, and friends. My name is Cacique Wakuya, which means our light in Taino Hitawahia. I am Boricua and Cubano, which means I hail from the island of Puerto Rico, and my blood ancestors come from Cuba as well. I reside in Waterbury. I'm the proud son of Ivan, nephew to Donna and Lily, and grandson to Meling, the original Taina warriors of my family. It is an honor to serve you all today and to serve under the tutelage of my Grand Atunwa or my Grand Chief, Jorge Estevez. I'm super excited to dive in today, and I'm super honored to speak with you all today. I'm going to be sharing my screen. I'm super excited to dive in with you all today and have this moment to really, really share with you a little bit about this, what we're here for today. Please feel free to drop any questions and comments in the chat. And as we go on today, I'm here, and it's not gonna be your traditional workshop. We're gonna make you guys be a part of this. And if anything else, you're gonna leave with one tool set that'll hopefully be great for your board and your board development and your really decolonization work to really help. So again, we're here with Future Pathways, Reclaiming Ancestral Governance and Modern Board Structures, the wisdom of the circle. And you are invited to, throughout this process today, to feel the warm embrace of community. I'd like to consider myself the gay Popra, Dr. Phil and Oprah. So I'm always going to be using my hands a lot and very, very expressive. But I want you to feel the love for me, and I'm here for you. And I did drop my information in the chat. If you'd like to reach out, let's reach out. to see the beauty in everything. And I'm going to share stories with regards to us, and somehow moments happen, things go wrong and go left, but we're able to still see the beauty in them and rise above them. And then lastly, to come together if and when we are broken. I know for me, I have been broken in many times in this journey and cultural and artwork endeavor, whether it was, starting this cultural center out of the back of my house and apartment and no one showed up for our first workshop, to us losing our physical space, to just conflicts, general conflicts with the community, people not understanding, but still with that invitation to come together if and when we are broken. I want to thank Mid-Atlantic Arts. And again, I am the proud founder of the Afro-Caribbean Cultural Center with 7 amazing, bad bleep women who are of color from the Caribbean who believed in me every step in the way. The whole purpose of this workshop today is to explore indigenous and ancestral governance traditions, to understand circle process, high level, and then to learn consensus building techniques. You will get after this workshop some amazing tools and tips and articles. If some folks are like me, this is great. Did I phrase the visual learning is great, but sometimes you want to dig deeper. You want to read, you want to see the research behind it. And what we're offering is an ancestral circle process and indigenous framework that is truly built on consensus building, right? Strengthening board relationships and accountability and developing practical governance tools for immediate use, right? And what you see in the background is amazing photos. This past week, actually, I went away for my board retreat. The Cultural Center centers doing a board retreat every year, whether that's 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, weekend. These are my board of directors for the Afro-Caribbean Cultural Center. We were in Puerto Rico in Loíza, which is the hub of Afro-Caribbeanness. And we went and dressed all in white to go dance on the beach in the ancestors at the nighttime. And we center healing and taking those moments of break before we did this. And this was just taken this weekend with my amazing board of directors. And you'll see different things like that throughout the week. But basically, I wanted to just begin by just saying I read all of your comments. You had the pre-question of what is your organization's biggest challenge? And I thank all of you when it comes to decision making for sharing honest thoughts. Some folks had co-directors. We lost our foundational director. We are trying to get the board on the same page. We're struggling with how do we properly use Robert's rules? And that is, of course, all things that I've experienced in my lifetime. And as nonprofit leaders and board members, we spend a tremendous amount of time discussing governance. We talk about bylaws, policies, fiduciary responsibilities, strategic framework, and all those things matter. They are important. And yet, what matters to most boards in order to struggling or not finding to succeed isn't anything found in a manual or policy. It's truly found in relationships. It's found in ancestral building of coming together and sharing your stories. And long before modern nonprofits even existed, the world developed a system for decision making through our ancestors, resolving conflicts, sharing responsibilities, stewarding resources. And indigenous nations, African societies, Caribbean communities, and countless other ancestral communities developed governance systems rooted in reciprocity, accountability, trust, and collective responsibility. So today is not about placing modern governance structures and requirements. It's about reclaiming wisdom that existed for generations, that is in your DNA and blood, wherever your ancestors come from. They sat around a fire. They sat around a place of coming together to build. And then how do we apply those teachings and strengthen our modern day board functions today? So today we're going to explore circle process a little bit. We're going to discuss those kinds of things. But I want to just say before we discuss governance models, I want us to think about our own experiences, right? Think about not just the things that are going wrong, but the best decision-making processes that you've participated in. I know for me, one of the best decisions that I made with the Cultural Center was that we as a collective own the organization. It's not on an individual. I am a founding executive director, but I've also put the board on notice. I want to travel the country. I want to travel the world. I want to go to your city and town. I want to bring these decolonizing techniques to the masses. So I put them on a 4-year notice. Listen, the countdown begins to find that transitional person after me. And as we move through today's workshop, I invite you to consider not just how your board or your leadership team makes decisions, but how people experience those decisions. For me, that's important. And again, I'm very anecdotal. I love to share stories. I have a board member on my board. Her name is Denise Martinez. She's become like my sister from another mister. And her and I disagree on so many things, and I love it actually. And there's been a couple of times where we've been at odds where I say, listen, I value you as a human. And I do value and love this work, but I want to continue to sow into our relationship. I don't want to lose our relationship over this decision. So, what can I do to meet you so that way we can come to a consensus on this matter? So, why does governance matter? Why does it matter when we're talking about organizations, right? Many boards and leadership assume that governance is simple oversight. Governance is so much more than oversight, right? The board, the leadership creates an environment in which the organizations operate under. If a board struggles with things like communication, then often the organization struggles with communication. If a board operates in fear or scarcity or exclusion, then those dynamics spread throughout the organization, right? Conversely, though, if a board demonstrates transparency, accountability, respect, collaboration, then those values become embedded in the organizational structure. And so when we're improving governance, we improve not only board performance, but the health of the overall organization. And a lot of the time in my work that I've seen when I'm consulting, because I've consulted so many amazing nonprofits, specifically that are BIPOC led or BIPOC focused, is what are your value sets, right? So governance shapes the culture, right? And they determine the alignment, the strategy, the organizational value, things you guys already know, right? And again, a lot of boards and leadership struggle with power imbalances, limited participation, conflict avoidance, burnout, and transactional relationships. And again, as you can see here in this group thing, this was a board retreat we did in one of our board members' houses one year, where again, I had very limited finite money in our first couple of years, and I just got a binder. We put our bylaws in there, and our retreats are always at least 3, 4 days. We go away, we stay at someone's house, we break bread together. It's very reminiscent. I'm old enough to remember, maybe you guys can, the real world days where everyone comes together, 8 strangers, live in a house, see if it's real, see if it works. That is definitely us because we're all BIPOC folks. Even this weekend in Puerto Rico, we were laughing it up and really going through the motions together, but taking that time to retreat to value set. And so when I say ancestral circling, what is ancestral governance and ancestral circling? And what does that mean for all of us, basically, right? And so when we talk about ancestral circling, we're talking about the health of the community is more important than an individual's authority. And when I say that is, I tell and I speak with my board and all the boards, a lot of the times we're doing this volunteer. I keep this 100. I started my consulting business only about 2, 3 years ago because I was offering a lot of this free 99. But I still have bills. I work a full-time job for a cancer research company. I am basically a part-time executive director making less than $20,000 a year. And I'm proud of that, right? And my crazy self went into politics and became a local city elected alderman or city councilor, right? So a lot of the times when we're doing this, I forget to take care of myself. I forget that self-care is important. I forget to root my family, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, my food, what's going on the table. And a lot of our board members go through that as well. And so it's allowing them to truly just say, what is going on in our community? How can we help? And how can I make sure that you're whole as well? So across many indigenous traditional cultures, decisions are community centered. Leadership was relational. It's all about the relationship I have. Elders guided but did not dominate. And I just mean that in the sense that sometimes it's a very Western US cultural, non-Indigenous practice where the folks who have been doing this work for 20, 30, 40 years, and I think of my mentor Hector Riodiano, did the work in community for 30 years around education. He never wanted to give up power. He never wanted to step down. And that's because, again, we in a very Western culture do not uplift our elders as sources of knowledge and resource. And we do a poor job, in my opinion, of taking care of our elders. But we have to make sure that they're there to give us that knowledge set, but they don't dominate. And then consensus was prioritized, and collectivity and accountability was a collective model. So we're super excited about this journey. And that's what I mean when I say that, leadership was viewed as a responsibility and trusted by the whole community. rather by positions of authority. And when I say that, I love to share anecdotes and stories. When I started this Afro-Caribbean Cultural Center, I am a fair-skinned Afro-Boricua. I just left Puerto Rico and I'm so mad that my tan didn't come to the level and the melanation that I wanted it. But I acknowledge that I have lighter skin privilege. And when I first started this cultural center, because I'm Puerto Rican and Cuban, but Waterbury, Connecticut has one of the largest concentrations of Puerto Ricans per capita, number 19 and 22 as far as percentage and number of Puerto Ricans. I realized quickly that a lot of the events, a lot of the activities were Puerto Rican based. One of my board members, who's a beautiful Quisqueyana, which means Dominican, said, "Hey, Rafael, if this is truly a Caribbean center, an Afro-Caribbean cultural center, you got to stop with just the Puerto Rican flags. You got to make sure that all cultures of the Caribbean are represented." And that was a beautiful call out. And then through intentionality, we've also made sure that every island in the Caribbean has at least some kind of representation on our board. When we talk about circle process, and again, this is the very first board retreat I ever did for the Afro-Caribbean Cultural Center. It was a 1 day, 6, 7 hour event. This was Lindsay, my treasurer, the one, towards the front of your screen with the black tank top. She was our treasurer. This is her home, her personal home. And we sat down and value set. We sat down and did our group community guidelines collectively. But when we talk about Indigenous circle process follows the Indigenous medicine wheel. And I am a trained restorative justice peace circle facilitator and trained the trainer. Our lineage goes back through the Wampanoag Nation of Massachusetts. They're the ones that taught it to my mentor, who then taught it to me, who now I offer out into our community. But the circle process follows the flow of water based on us in the Northern Hemisphere from left to right. And it allows us equity, interconnection, shared responsibility, respectful participation, and community wisdom. And so when we're talking about circle, everyone can see everyone. Everyone has a voice and a value. No one sits at the head of the table, and wisdom is often shared. But the circle process is actually one of the oldest governance structures in the world. Think about that. I said that at the beginning. Whatever your ancestral lineage is from, whether it's from Europe or Asia or Africa or the Caribbeans or the Americas, there were indigenous tribes that sat around a fire. Yes, they were chiefs, yes, they were leaders, but the collective community made those decisions. And I love to share stories within everyone. Is that in the Taino culture, there was actually, yes, a chief, but there was a council of women, grandmothers called Yakutus. You can never have a chief in your tribe, or you can never be named a chief unless the Akutus or the grandmother council gets together and names you a chief. That is why in Taino culture, women could also serve as chiefs, because the women were actually the ones deciding who led their regional tribes or their local tribes. So we have that embedded in our blood. It changed how power operates. We follow, and I'm going to be mentioning a lot, the three invitations at the beginning are actually the three invitations of Indigenous Circle Process from the Wampanoag Nation. The invitation to feel the warm embrace of community, come together if and when we are broken, and to see the beauty in everything. So the circle reminds us that governance is fundamentally relational. Um, and again, it's more than just a meeting format. Circle governance encourages deep listening, shared leadership, shared responsibility, and some collective problem solving, right? So circle asks, instead of who has the authority, who has the power, what wisdom does the community hold? And what do I mean by that? On our board, yes, we have amazing events that every nonprofit has, right? We have a Black and Latino 30 under 30 statewide award. We run the Waterbury Puerto Rican Day Parade and Festival. We go out and run this amazing youth program called Cuyo, which is the Taino word for light and fire, which teaches our young youth to connect on their African diasporicness and their Taino-ness. They learn decolonized history of the US. So we have programs like every other arts and nonprofit and organization. Yes, I am the executive director, but each board member, because we're a smaller nonprofit, is also almost actioning as if they're part of the leadership team, the staff team. They have their own wisdom sets and knowledge bases that they love. That's what they focus on. That's what they support. If they're not passionate about it, we don't force them to say, hey, every single board member has to do every single thing. Of course, we have our all hands on deck for our major gala and stuff like that that everyone supports. But it also allows the board member then to add their expertise into it. And again, I go back to Denise. I'm going to mention her a lot, my sister from another mister. We clash, we argue, we debate in the most beautiful way within the circle process. And yet she pays every month for our grantwatch.com membership out of her own pocket. And she's the first one to send me all the list of grants that are available for the cultural center. And that's her passion. That's how she contributes to the board. So again, it's really just a governance philosophy. And again, you don't physically have to sit in the circle to be a part of circle because right now we're here digitally. And so when we do circle, the two things that we begin with everyone, and you guys are going to experience that today. Number one is, what values am I bringing to the work? What do I value is important to me? And then number two is that yes, we have bylaws and all the things you need for the 501c3 structure that exist, but we've gotten rid of Robert's Rules of Order. We don't follow that. We come up with our own board guidelines every year during board retreat, and those guidelines are then through consensus adopted by our board to do this work together. Oh, someone has their hand up.
So for me, I always think about these practices being integrated in already established organizations that are used to a particular culture. What would you suggest with a board that is open to functioning differently in the model that you're presenting today? Like what does that transition look like? Are there some practices that you can offer some boards to lean in this direction?
Great question. Gracias, Arico Mabu. So again, and I do work for example, I'm right now the hired consultant for the Rivera Memorial Foundation. They've been in existence for 37 years. They transitioned from a foundational executive director to the daughter of the foundational director, and they have a total new board. And so to your point exactly, they would love to truly start implementing little bits because some of their board members did stay and they've been doing it that way for years. So what I tell folks is, listen, let's do a retreat. Let's, even if it's a day, because some board members can't effectuate it, it could be online. And let's just start with values and community guidelines. Even if it's just those two things to start, are going to be transformational. You guys are going to get practice in that today. What does that look like when we say value setting? Because, and this is a no slight to anyone and whatever your personal beliefs are, but if we're working together and our value sets are misaligned, what do I mean when I say that? If someone's value set is they see me as an Afro-Boricua, queer, thickums, chunky man, and they believe that my existence isn't valid, then I'm not sure that we can build together no matter how much your love of the arts are, right? If someone says, and they value set, and I have that within my own Boricua community, well, you're not really Afro-Caribbean. We don't have African in us. We're not dark. Well, that's a racist and colorist mindset. I'm not sure that our value sets are aligned. You might like the bomba and the stuff that I do, but if you can't see that, then maybe our value sets are misaligned. So to your point, baby steps. You don't have to throw out your bylaws today. I'm not telling all that. I hope that comes across. But if there's one thing you could take, and I lead circle processes throughout, a lot of the times people just steal the plate idea that I have and the value sets idea. So like, as you can see in all of our circles, and this is a circle I led at the center at Halstead in Chicago, Illinois, there are these plates here. And on one side of the plates, folks write their values, and on the other side, they write their guidelines. And it becomes our first interaction towards groups digging in to see, oh, well, that works for me, that doesn't work for me. So I think it's all depending too on the organization. Organizations are at different life cycles as well, and knowing where your organization is in your life cycle is critical. And working with someone, again, I'm here. I primarily help, like I said, BIPOC led or run organizations, but I'm here to offer that advice and guidance to all of y'all. So we can look at it. We can definitely dig into that. But I think small incremental steps, especially if you have an established board who's used to Robert's rules, who's used to that, like, what is this consensus thing? What do you mean I could live with it? How do we translate that into minutes? Like all of those super specific questions we get into because our board from the beginning has implemented that. And I do go into board and say, listen, consensus looks different. We still record the meetings. We still notate narratively anyone who had objections. But then at the end, it's like, can you live with it or not? And then how do you capture that information and data? But if you cannot come to a consensus as a group because we value Indigenous processes, you take time to then continue the circle. You have to trust the circle. It might not be like your traditional board meetings, because then you need to discuss what is it if the majority or the consensus of the group is, we don't feel that. Well, let's talk about it. What can we do to get y'all to feel comfortable, to be able to live with it or support it? And it is a lot of compromise and it's a lot of listening. And this kind of segues into here, and I'll get into that specifically a little bit later. In the circle process, there is a talking piece that folks use, and I've heard people use the talking piece as a control tool or mechanism. It's not that. If anyone says that, please tell them, put that talking piece down. The talking piece is a cohesion around values and the guidelines that the community has set, which is that whoever has that talking piece has three sovereign logics, three rights: the right to speak, the right to pass, the right to absorb energy. And just take a moment of breather, right? And we're going to get into that in the later slides. So when the consensus isn't reached, then you keep going. Our circles, one topic discussion could be 10, 15 minutes, could be a couple hours. We want to make sure that the group is satisfied. And if there's one within the group that's still like, I can't live with this, we ask them, okay, look, even if you can't live with this, are you okay with the collective's decision and the consensus around it? And majority of the time it's yes, but it would be different than that. So again, it's beautiful, it's different, and then the group's ultimate consensus is respected. But we might sit there, like literally our last board meeting, instead of your board meeting being an hour, ours go for 3 hours. And we meet quarterly, we don't meet every month. But we will sit in that circle until we're all satisfied. And if it is a true hot topic or hotbed issue, that issue might be our whole 1 hour of the meeting. And that's okay for us. There's other things that the group's like, yeah, that just makes sense. Go. Done. Like, oh my God, that's awesome. And so it's really interesting to see those dynamics play out, right? So deep listening creates better governance, right? Listening, not waiting to speak, but listening, seeking to understand before responding is something that my board had to shift their mindset on. Because under the Roberts rules, it's a debate, it's a give and take, it's a transaction. I'm listening to respond to yours to try to get the vote, versus if I listen to hear you, and if I know your value set, I know what's going on, I know the background, then it will be different for that. So again, seeing those values play out are important. Making space for just silence. Sometimes board members are great. I have two on my board that are sound healers, Reiki practitioners who will just say, can we all just take a breather? Can we reset? I just need, and it just resets completely. So it's just really, really different and in a different process and way. So when we talk about consensus, because I think this is some of the questions we have, right? What consensus versus majority rule, right? What is consensus when we talk about consensus? And what does that look like for, or could look like for your organization? Because that's important, right? In consensus, everyone's voice is heard, or again, they have that right to speak, to pass, to absorb energy. But if they pass, there's no questions asked, there's no forcing you. Again, I like to share stories. I hated as a kid. I was probably, didn't have many diagnoses back then. I probably did have ADHD. I probably am on the spectrum. I never got diagnosed, but I could not stay still in my dang seat. And I hated when teachers would call on me. It irked my nerves. Like, let me speak if I want to speak. Or they say, no, no, you have to answer the question. You don't have to, right? The group seeks common ground, members are supportive, but consensus does not mean that everybody gets their way. Everyone completely agrees that there's no disagreement, that 100% of what you're idealistically wanting is going to get done. We do have disagreements within the circle process that do occur. And so we would also like to know that that happens. And like I said, this was literally just taken from board retreat this weekend. I'll share honestly and candidly with you all. One of my board's biggest things that creates animosity within the group, even though we're restorative justice based, is that for major events, major activities, there's always board members who have an emergency who back out or say, hey, I can't make it today. And other members are left having to take on that responsibility or role. So what did we do? We sat there, we talked in circle, it took us 45 minutes. What we left with an agreement on is that the board members would not only text me, they would text our board chair, our board clerk, our board treasurer. The four of us would get a text together saying, hey, I cannot make it. And then the board through consensus agreed that every single major board committee or work or focus area cannot have just one board member. But it would truly make that work. And so that's That's what that means when we talk about consensus. And when we're diving deeper into consensus, and I'm going to get into the mechanics of it a little bit more, the benefits are it encourages collaboration, it does build strong buy-in, it surfaces concerns early throughout the process, and then it strengthens your relationships. And so how do we get to that level is through trust, right? And trust isn't a soft skill. Trust is not, in my opinion, it's not given, it's earned over time. You have to really have those kinds of conversations. But the most important thing that I do want to be honest is transparent with you guys. It's not all peaches and roses either. I don't want to sit here and paint this dream narrative that consensus is the best thing. The reality is consensus does take more time. You heard that a typical board meeting, and granted, we only meet quarterly because we are connected and a lot of our decisions are made by consensus. So our board at an event can meet in a corner and say, hey, we've given the agreement that if we're at an event and a decision needs to be made, we don't need to call a meeting to order and vote on it. We can come together in a corner and through consensus say, hey, this is what we're going to do. It does require strong facilitation or hosting capabilities. And so again, this model might not be for you. And it does surface a lot of uncomfortable issues and conversations for folks sometimes. Things that, again, because we are a restorative justice practicing organization, conversations around sexism, racism, homophobia, transphobia, colorism, machismo, all of these things can come to light that might not necessarily seem like they're part of a traditional board experience, but they need to be talked about. Those things need to be brought up. And that's why the circle process can handle that. But once those come up, you can really tackle those. And they demand patience. A lot of the times, um, through listening, through respecting sovereign logic, through just taking that time to breathe, I realize that a lot of the times I'm listening and really just breathing through and then trying to, just because I see where people's values are, we work through it in that moment. But the payoff is that there's less conflict later. There's less opportunity sometimes I've seen for issues to bubble up so big that it becomes a blowout or a fight or an argument where people are leaving angrily. And the Cultural Center has seen what I call different classes of board members come and go. And I've seen that with other institutions that we work with now. Their board members are seen as almost like transitioning off, and that's okay. It's not seen as a negative thing and stuff like that. And so when we talk about this shared approach, moving beyond individual responsibility, and this is another board retreat, as you can see, lots of post-its, lots of paper. Yes, there are SMART goals that exist. I've seen that a lot in organizations. There's SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, action-oriented, time-oriented. And I like to tell my folks, time was the master's construct to keep us on the field and keep us working and keep us productive. So for us, it's just like, how are we collectively responsible? Who has the best knowledge and focus area in that area? That's why at different points in the organization, we might need different sets of board members for different sets of skills. And that's okay. In some organizations, when I come into work and they have me do their, SWOT analysis and look, and I say, hey, maybe it's just the board members that we have. We got to recruit to get some newer board members in, or some different context area folks. And what did we learn from the process, right? For us, that's the biggest thing. What did we learn if we failed? What did we learn if we succeeded? How did we contribute to that? And what can we improve upon? I think for us, it's those broader questions. And again, I share honestly and openly with you all. I'm sure many of y'all were impacted. We were one of the Arts Here grant recipients from the Biden administration. And we did use a substantial amount of that money to do our first ever strategic framework or strategic plan. And then the funding got cut halfway through. And we had to close our physical doors. We had to close our space. We had to make sure that we were able to work with that consultant to wrap it up. Um, but as a result of that, we have moved back to our roots, which was a center without walls. We got rid of the walls, we got rid of the barriers, we got rid of all that stuff. And it wasn't easy because not every board member wanted us to give up the building. Not every board member wanted us to give up our prime space downtown. And it really created a lot of turmoil within the organization. And we sat in circle for a week. Every night we would come together and just buy dinner. We would talk about it. We would talk about it, talk about it, until we finally came up with the consensus that we had to let go of the building. It was going to weigh us down to the point where we would close. Versus now, almost 6, 7, 8 months later, we have gotten that funding restored again through New England Foundation of the Arts. We have gotten so many amazing blessings as a result of us giving up that space that had we stood there, we know we would have been closed.
How do you think people should learn from this model, the model being the circle processing? while being respectful of the original unique tribal traditions. I'd also be curious to hear about the room's experience with what is called restorative justice. I've been in environments that espouse the values of it, but were unable to really make it work due to the fact that they are not functioning in the full community circle that Indigenous processes needs.
I think two things. One is I would definitely, when implementing this work, like even me, even though I'm Taino, even though I live in Connecticut, I shared with you the ancestral lands of which I'm on. The Mashantuck and Pequot Tribal Nation, the Golden Pagusset Tribal Nation, and the Mohegan Tribal Nation, we did approach them in respect and honoring and saying, hey, we are going to be using this model in our work. As you guys heard, I get my teachings from the Wampanoag Indigenous Tribal Nation of Massachusetts. Is this a model that we can use, right? Always check in with your local Indigenous community and folks. And a lot of the times they actually would love that. And for example, at the Cultural Center, we've now grown to the point here in Connecticut, we have two tribal nations that do have casinos. They are, they have been blessed and they use that towards their tribal work. They see the work that we're doing in the Cultural Center with Taino language and reclamation. And now they're actually a funder of ours all these years later, 5 years later, because we asked them and we connected with them. And so to your point, always go back to your local Indigenous tribes and community and just say, hey, we are just using this practice. We don't want folks to feel that way. And simple things like the land acknowledgements at the beginning of our events that I did today, those things really go a long way. And those local Indigenous communities and tribal nations will tell you what they need, but you're absolutely right. You should go back to that. And I offer this, and I teach this in circle. And again, it's not to heal the wounds that do exist and to erase any of the crazy, messed up colonization and everything that's happened in this world. One of the things we talk about in circle is that all of our blood DNA streams from 4 DNA models and strands. There's variations, 1 or 2 here or there. But what does that mean? It just basically means that indigeneity and our ancestors, our DNA came from 4 tribes. So we were all born from 4 tribal nations out of Mother Africa that then started, mating and we know that from science and history and technology. And so some of it is baked in, and I would encourage you to check in with that. And part of the circle process that we teach is sharing your sacred story, to start going back and trying to find that lineage. And I know some people don't, right? The slave trade erased a lot of my African American kindred's lineage and history. But let's go back and let's explore our own histories to see those connecting points, to see where our indigenous roots come from, because that then brings you to your genuineness, if you will, of what indigenous practices you're bringing to your trade. There's this in this circle process. There was this beautiful. She was sitting over here, past my friend David's head to the right, under the name of 15. Beautiful Irish Gaelic, beautiful, amazing, progressive Catholic woman who was a part of this circle process. And you can see the tip of her little scarf there on the floor. And she was super connected and rooted in Chicago about her Irish indigeneity. What did she do on the last day of circle? And I cried like a baby. She sang an Irish Gaelic hymn to the whole group as our closing process. And to me, that was beautiful. She did not appropriate anyone's culture. She did not, but she brought who she was, her intentionality to the space. And it was the most powerful thing in the world to us, and that respected her indigenous roots of her Irish Gaelic background. And that's why I'm here, and that's why there are folks that are out there that are teaching the indigenous circle process. For example, I believe, because the Wampanoag Nation has told us, it is my calling and duty to offer circle process for free for BIPOC and marginalized people. So we are a center that does not charge for our 4-day experience. We do ask for a stipend for our facilitators, but we won't have you charge your folks $1,500 to $2,000 to experience a circle process, because that has become now a systematized and institutionalized practice. Wow, if this was free 99 to our ancestors. We did this around fires. So reach out if you'd like to schedule a 4-day experience or a 2-day experience. And I've shared this with Karis. I don't mind traveling out to the center of the country. My corporate headquarters in Chicago. I fly all the time. Let's set something up where I can connect you with amazing facilitators who are doing that same work, because we need this practice out in our community, because it is both, it has healing properties, it's therapeutic, it's not therapy, it's not anything, but it does allow us some healing modalities that we need in our lives.
Do you still have elected officers?
So we have kept, because again, on paper, as you all know, in a 501c3 and the IRS, you need a clerk, you need a chair, you need a treasurer. That's required by the IRS. And so we do have to live in that model. But the cool thing of how we get there for us is not based on elected status. It's based off of your tenure and your service with the organization. What do I mean by that? I'm no longer on the board. I was a founding member and a board member. I stepped off because the organization started paying me, and now I'm executive director. Our board chair is Nicole Delgado. Why? Not because of we voted her, she's the most popular. She has been there since the founding of the Cultural Center. She's the longest serving board member. She has that institutional knowledge. So, almost through again consensus, she is the chair on paper and she helps to facilitate some of the meetings because she's done circle process from the beginning. And part of our requirement to be on our board of directors is that you have to go through our 4-day circle process experience. It's part of your onboarding. It's a requirement because that's how we govern. Rane is the second longest serving board member, and she is our clerk. She loves to be the historian and gather our notes and make sure she's capturing what our discussions are. And then our treasurer, Alexa, is the third longest serving board member. And she loves the money aspect. She loves to make sure I give my receipts, and she loves to make sure the IRS isn't breathing down her neck and work with my CFO, who I do have, Dwayne. But our model is a little bit different in how those individuals are selected. We base it on your tenure and your time. And then every year they have the right, because we respect sovereign logic, they have the right to stay. I want to stay on. I want to pass this year, or I want to pass once my term is done on paper, according to the IRS, or I want to just absorb. I just want to continue to be on the board, but not have that leadership, quote unquote, responsibility. And that's worked for us. It's a different model, but it does work. So trust as a governance structure, like I said, is a big part of that sacred connection. Trust influences participation, transparency, quality, innovation, organizational resilience. It's built through right relationship, which I talked about earlier. Right relationship for us as an organization is allowing you freedom, access, and connection through those sovereign logics that you have, the power to speak, pass, and absorb energy. And so this is really, really a good part of what we offer and what it's all about in our organization. And then leadership is as a steward, and that was a great question. When we someone just asked, how do you elect leaders, right? Leader is for us viewed as a service, right? The leader's role in our organization is to hold the vision, to create space for participation. Even though we have a board chair, what I love about Nicole is she talks the least. She's there to help guide, facilitate, support the dialogue, and really make sure we're all learning and growing. Like her biggest strength is that one-on-one, she reaches out to board members and say, hey, you okay? She's the one that does their orientation. Hey, this is what we're about. This is our mission. This is our vision. And again, as you can see in the picture outside, we just truly love to build and get to know each other. This was a cold winter retreat. We needed it because again, we had just got our funding cut. We all chipped in and rented a huge, massive Airbnb. And so it's just powerful. So our community guidelines for our board this year was honoring and respecting sovereign logic, which again is that power to speak, pass, and absorb energy, to also honor the invitations of circle, to respect others' figurative, physical space, thoughts and opinions, and beliefs and energies or emotions. And then we came up with a cool, unique thing. If someone ever feels offended or hurt in our group, we're going to use the ouch model, which is just saying, oh, ouch, like, oh, that hurt, right? But they still have sovereign logic. So if they say ouch, but they don't want to talk about it, they don't want to get into it, they still have the power to speak, pass, or absorb energy. So they can say ouch, we're going to pause to acknowledge that ouch. But then they still have that sovereign logic. If they say, no, move on, I'm good, but that was an ouch for me. Okay, great. Or I want to talk about that ouch, then we'll stop. Communication for us, we wanted Google Calendar invites. We do use Facebook Messenger as our tool for official communication because we can see the bubbles and who read it. Back carbon copying in Gmails, advance notice 4 to 5 months in advance of possible of events so they can really plan out their lives because they're all working, mostly men and women of color. And tactful but direct communication. They don't like sugarcoating. They want it straight. Just give it to me straight, Raf. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't give me none of that BS. Tell us what's going on so we know, so we can handle it and we have your back. They wanted to ensure that we are continuing our model of transparency around finance, minutes, and grants opportunities. building and honoring right relationship, which is freedom, access, and connection, allowing for healing breaks. Something that we valued, even when we went away from Puerto Rico this time, we did sound healing on the beach. We went to Bomba Loiza. We went to a Taino site. They said that their most joyous moments of being on the board was those moments of healing and healing modalities than the work because they're getting something out of it as well. And then lastly, continuing to build brave and safe spaces for our board. If you guys can tell, like when you saw the plates earlier, I let people write all the values that matter to them. We always take time, and everyone laughs when I come into a room in space as a facilitator organizer. They go, "Oh damn, here comes Rafael with the plates." Yes, we're gonna do the plates. He's the plates. Hallelujah. Why? Because if I see what you value, right? Hearing those things like, self accountability, clearness, right? Cultural direct communication. A lot of y'all said direct communication, and I mentioned that earlier. That to me was the number one thing. A lot of my board members also, I realized, valued family. They valued music. So in our group, we always have music going on in the background. Because if we all value that, it's one of those cool ways where we could connect, right? And then we also, again, we value healing in our group because I know that I'm broken. I know a lot of my peers are broken on my board, but we're just supposed to come together, work on this agenda, this minute, this, that. We need those. So we build in intentional breaks into our quarterly board meetings where we will do mindfulness at the beginning. We'll do a breathing exercise. My member Saida is a Reiki expert. She taught me how to do the tapping thing. Yo, I'll be tapping myself all the time now. She'd be like, "Ooh," like all this stuff that I didn't know before, but now I'm tapping myself all the time. She'd be like, Saida, you got me tapping all these chakra areas and points. I'm telling you, I learned. You guys can start seeing into your board members and your leaders and what they value. Then you see what they don't value, right? For me, it was the fact that, again, we abandoned Robert's Rules of Order as our governing structure. For me, it was just like, listen, I tried it the first year, it did not work. I'm teaching this restorative justice circle process on the side. Why am I following this book? And who the heck's Robert? I mean, I have to use it all the time in city council. But why are we following his rule when I'm teaching this indigenous method and process? Let's try it. Let's just try it for a year or two. It was a learning curve. It was very weird. The board's like, so wait, how does this correlate to the agenda and the minutes? Listen, it's there for the IRS because we have to have it because I got to send it to a funder or a grantor who needs to see the minutes. But we just audio record. Again, we have consent, our minutes, and we just talk. Here's the stuff we got to talk about today. We're going to go in circle. We're going to go around. We're going to discuss them. And then my clerk takes that and transcribes that into those things. And again, someone asked earlier, what if consensus fully isn't met? Then we still record that person that's like, listen, I'm not comfortable with this. I can't live with this. And we move on from that. We then go and say, okay, that person then in traditional Robert's Rules world is technically a no vote. They didn't want that. They disagreed with that. They were not consenting to that agreement, but it's still, right? The motion, the issue still moves forward because the collective of the board stated they want it, but the members like it because then they get to see their little call outs of, oh, I said I didn't like that. And here's why. And I know it's going to be reflected in the minutes. We've made the bylaws simplified so they meet the requirements of the IRS, but it removes, because that's how you get rid of Robert, right? Because if you put in your bylaws, you'll follow Robert's Rules of Order, then you're stuck to that. That's how you're supposed to govern. So we say we keep it where it's operationally functional, where like again, the IRS needs to see if you ever dissolve where the money's going, where the assets are going. Great. Okay, leave that in there. It says that you have it, but we've transitioned to now saying we're using indigenous restorative justice model practices in our bylaws. So again, in a traditional model or like in the modalities that you guys are going to get papers on and stuff, this is one consensus model. It's the 5-finger model, or it's just to say we don't use fingers or anything like that, but we kind of have and live in this world of, hey, how are you feeling? Let's just check in on this topic or issue. Do you support it? Are you good with it? You're like, oh, this is the best thing. I fully got this. Yeah, I support it. It's cool. I'm cool. I don't got no issues. If they're not 100% happy, but they really don't have a say, they'll say, well, I can live with it. I can live with that decision. I'm good with it, right? I have significant concerns, like, hey, this is like I'm not feeling it. And then number one is I just can't support this. I can't get behind this, right? We don't really have all 5. I'm okay with it. I'm good with it. I support it. I'm okay with it. And I'm not okay with it. That's ours. We just whittled it down to 3. And so, like I said earlier, when I was talking to y'all in here, we do honor the sovereign logic, which is the power to speak, pass, or absorb energy on a topic. So even if a member absorbs energy or passes, we just get a group consensus. Hey, is everyone cool with it? Everyone good? We kind of do thumbs up. Yeah, we're good. We move on. Sometimes that really helps us because then we know it's unanimously good. oh no, we're good. We see that. We're a part of that. Or those hot topic button issues like closing our physical space, changing our bylaws, those did require some more of that. And then lastly, before we wrap up, a leader's role, whether that's your board chair, your ED, whoever's holding this space. Again, I just want to reiterate this and bring this home. Whoever's leading or facilitating or hosting this consensus or circle style process of leadership for your board, their job is to hold your mission and vision, to really create a space for participation, support dialogue, facilitate training, strengthen community, but not serve in an authoritarian policing. Oh, you're out of order, or you're this, or you're that. Because if you're honoring the medicine wheel and circle and that talking piece, they're just there to make sure that we're honoring those commitments to each other. And so leadership is a service, not power over others, but a responsibility towards one another. And then again, integrating ancestral practices into your nonprofit, like we are talking about. Begin with just opening reflections. When's the last time we ever checked in with one another and said, hey, how's your day going? My board knows I don't ever start a meeting until we've all checked in. Hey, how's it going? How you feeling? How's your family? How's your kid? How's your life? And then we also have an official check-in before we even start our meeting. Hey, get whatever you need to get off about your day. Let's just check in. How was your day? Go through and let all that out, because we have to work. If you're a human being and you're late, your Starbucks or your Dunkin' coffee spilled on you, right? The kid was late. My significant other drove me nuts today. Just having that human moment to get that off your chest is life-changing. The agreements, instead of it being a pre-prescribed ground rules or here's the norms or here's the rules, and again, Zoom is different today, this meeting's different. But when you're governing, making sure that everyone has a say and an input, because I'm a rebel. Anytime I go to a meeting or facilitation, I go, that like is a like we're gonna do some heavy weighty work. And I go, here's the ground rules. Well, who came up with that? Who said that that's what I agreed to? You don't even know my value. You don't know where I'm at. And then those check-ins with the consensus. And then, like I said, values based. We always go back to the values. We always go back to, I know what you value as a human. I know what you value, that I'm with you. And then those relationship building activities. It's not just during a retreat throughout the whole year. We'll go out to dinner together. We'll drink together. We'll go to a beach together. We really build our relational skills with one another within governance, because then those moments help us in those moments of difficulty where we're not in alignment, when we don't agree. We're going to laugh about the fact that in Puerto Rico, one of my board members ate another board member's flan, and it was like the mystery of who ate the dang flan. Okay. And we were just busting out laughing because we saw different sides of people. And it was funny because the aunties and uncles and me, because I'm older, we were just packing up our stuff like, oh, this is none of our business. We leaving. Thank you so much. Have a good day. But those are the moments we'll look back on and laugh when we're having a disagreement about something. So that's where that comes from. And again, I'm here to help support any way that I can. And what I love about the circle process when we get in there, honoring the sovereign logic and the talking piece, whoever has that, is the one who has the floor to talk. Everyone else in that moment is listening until the talking piece gets to them. Why is that important? And it's different in the work. I know me because I was always used to like, oh, I got a response to that. Oh, I want to chime in. But if you respect the medicine wheel and wisdom, if let's say I'm in the center of the circle and there's people, well, that's your left, right? I'm on the opposite of you guys, right? So it's going around the circle, around the circle, around the circle, and then it comes back to me. I have to wait till that talking piece comes right back to me. That could be 10, 15 minutes later. 3 or 4 people might have had the same sentiments that I did. Because now I'm listening to listen. I'm not listening to respond. By the time it comes back to me, yeah, I might have felt, a kind of passionate, or I might have thought I had a response to my board member, which happens sometimes. This is one of those moments where we're listening to reflect and go, oh, okay. And then, like I said, consensus building. By the time it comes back to me, some board members are like, what she's saying is totally not like, I'm understanding part of what she's saying. I'm understanding part of what you're saying. I offer this as an alternate or as a resolution. So by the time it gets back to me, it's like, I like the resolution. I like the compromise. I like what you came up with. That's actually really cool. And again, that's something that if you want, we can dig into, because I started this with my friends. So I know that process, and some of my friends are off the board now. But those models, with you're doing those indigenous circle processes, it can add to that to help mitigate that. Oh, we're all ready to go. We're all on 1,000. Let's go. Let's handle that. So I'm here for you, and please reach out. I would love to touch base with you if you would want to implement some of this stuff.
Thank you so much, Rafael. And thank everyone for attending this workshop. Please have a fantastic Thursday. Yeah, have a fantastic Thursday. and take care of yourselves. Be well.